6:40 hours. November 21st, 1944. Lixières, Lorraine, France. The temperature was -3°C. Frost limned the tree line. Mist rolled low across the open field, smothering visibility below 20 meters. Oberleutnant Ralph Dietrich gripped the commander's hatch of his Panther Ausf G serial number 835219. Its engine still rumbled from the pre-dawn reposition. Diesel smoke clung to his uniform. The field smelled like damp metal and spent cordite. He adjusted his goggles. The glass fogged from breath. He wiped it clear with a gloved thumb. Nothing but fog. He had 12 tanks under his command. 1 radio frequency. 1 mission. Delay the American 4th Armored Division. Reports said their advance had stalled in the rain. Fuel shortages, mud, ambushes. They would come slowly, if at all. But something felt wrong. He scanned the smoke wall with binoculars. No movement. Then shadows. 1, 2, 3. More. Shermans, not emerging, appearing from the fog, in formation. Like a drill team. 12 tanks, moving as one. Arcs of black exhaust marked their paths. They fanned left, right, center. No hesitation, no disorder. They weren't hunting, they were executing. Dietrich's loader shouted, "Zwei weitere." 2 more. The fog thickened again, but the Shermans kept coming. Dietrich screamed into the headset, "Achtung, Achtung! Sie sind überall, Scheisse, Scheisse, they're everywhere." He fired first, missed. Then 5 muzzle flashes answered. Simultaneous, precise. His gunner swore. The loader jammed the next round. Too late. Another flash hit. Panther 835219 rocked backward. Turret jammed. Periscope blown. Dietrich slid into the hull as fire burst behind him. The heat was instant. Paint peeled from the turret interior. Outside, Shermans advanced not fast, but without pause. Not reckless. Rehearsed. The Panther's strength was singular combat. Precision shots. Kill at distance. But this wasn't combat, this was coordination. 12 tanks, 1 mind. He called for support. No answer. 1 tank's transmitter was down. Another misheard the coordinates. A third was already burning. The fog swirled again. Another volley. Another Panther killed. Dietrich understood too late. This wasn't a duel. It was a demonstration. His tank, once feared in Normandy, now burned beside a cratered road in Lorraine. The gun was still superior. The optics, unmatched. But the enemy didn't need better tanks. They brought more. They brought faster replacements. They brought radios that all worked. He watched 1 Sherman slow to a crawl, only to have 3 others move forward without breaking formation. Oberleutnant Dietrich had survived Kursk, Kharkov, the Normandy hedgerows. He did not survive Lorraine. The Panther burned through the morning mist. 12 tanks, 1 machine, and the fog swallowed everything. German tank commanders had reason to be confident. Since 1941, they'd bested superior numbers through fire discipline, maneuver, and superior optics. The Panther, with its 75mm KWK 42L70 gun, could destroy Shermans at over 1,500 meters. In contrast, most American tanks had to close within 800 meters for a chance to penetrate. Precision had been their answer to mass. Experience had been their advantage over enthusiasm. In tank cruise slang, the American M4 Sherman had a cruel nickname, Ronson. It lit the first time, every time. That wasn't a joke. It was a battlefield reality. The Sherman's gasoline engine, high profile, and thin side armor made it a death trap when flanked. German officers like Oberst Reinhard Kruger, who had fought at Kursk, scoffed at American designs. Detroit steel. They muttered, soft like their coffee. The Panthers' sloped armor and long-range gun made it, in their minds, the perfect tank, at least on paper. American tactics were dismissed as predictable. Line advances, box formations, radios chattering constantly. German crews relied on hand signals, tight coordination between commander and gunner, and initiative. To them, radios were a crutch, not a strength. A Wehrmacht technical report in early 1944 concluded American armor inferior in firepower, protection, and tactical coordination. The data confirmed what they already believed. Even in Normandy, surrounded and outnumbered, the Panthers and Tigers had traded 3-1, sometimes 5-1 in kills. To men like Dietrich, the idea that American tanks could become a real threat seemed absurd. They mocked not just the hardware, but the culture that built it. Merchant thinking, they said, you cannot win a war with a factory. But something was changing by autumn 1944. The Americans weren't just pushing, they were replacing. Shermans lost on Tuesday returned by Friday. Fuel dumps were never empty. Artillery responded in minutes. The front moved constantly. At Ericourt, German battalions attacked thinking they held the advantage in guns, crews, and armor. They were right, but they didn't know they were walking into a problem factories had already solved. Coordination, logistics, multiplication. By the time Dietrich's Panther burned near Lixières, the veterans no longer joked about Ronson, because they weren't fighting tanks anymore. They were fighting a machine that didn't care about armor. In the span of one season, summer to winter, the arithmetic of war had reversed. The joke had become a warning, and the Panthers weren't laughing. The Panther didn't exist in 1940. It was a panic design born in shock at Kursk. In July 1943, the Germans first fielded it against waves of Soviet T-34s. It was a direct response to the surprise of 1941 when the Wehrmacht first encountered the sloped armor and wide tracks of Soviet tanks that their Panzer IIIs and IVs couldn't counter. The solution wasn't speed, it was firepower, armor, and precision. Design work began in January 1942. Mann took the lead. Daimler-Benz, Henschel, and Maschinenfabrik Niedersachsen joined later. The gun was long and lethal. The armor sloped and thick. The problem, complexity. Every Panther took over 55,000 man-hours to build. Welding the hull alone took 3 times longer than a Sherman. Meanwhile, in America, a different philosophy reigned. The M4 Sherman wasn't elegant. It wasn't revolutionary. It was consistent. Designed by the U.S. Ordnance Department in 1941, it had a cast or welded hull, interchangeable parts, and a standard width to fit rail cars. The design accepted it might not win every duel, but it could arrive on time, be fixed quickly, and come back faster than the enemy could respond. 5 companies made Shermans: Chrysler, Ford, Fisher, Pressed Steel, and Pacific Car and Foundry. The Detroit Arsenal Tank Plant, America's first mass-production tank facility, ran 3 shifts around the clock. In 1942, it made 1,500 Shermans. In 1943, over 11,000. By 1944, 17,000. Each took about 10,000 man-hours. By contrast, the Germans built 6,000 Panthers, total. The Americans didn't just standardize parts, they standardized coordination. Every Sherman had a radio, not just a receiver, transmit and receive. Commanders could talk, maneuver, and fire in concert. In Panther units, only some tanks had working transmitters. Coordination came from hand signals or prearranged tactics. In fog or under fire, it failed. And then came the logistics system. The Americans didn't just build tanks, they built the pipelines to keep them running. Replacement engines, fuel by the ton, ammunition by the trainload. Red Ball Express routes ran 24 hours a day. Mechanics operated like pit crews. Recovery teams had Shermans towed, repaired, and redeployed in 48 hours. A disabled Panther might sit for a week if it wasn't abandoned entirely. Captain Walter Jones, U.S. Army Logistics Officer, put it bluntly. Our tank wasn't better. Our system was. Panthers arrived late, broke often, and retreated without fuel. Shermans showed up first, fought in groups, and returned the next day. The Panther was a masterpiece of engineering. The Sherman was a masterpiece of manufacturing. One won battles, the other won wars. Sherman production wasn't just higher, it was exponential. In 1944 alone, the United States built over 17,000 Shermans. Germany built 2,820 Panthers that same year. Not 10% more, 600% more. And those weren't just numbers, they were replacements. Every lost Panther was a permanent subtraction. Every lost Sherman was an equation already solved. Next came fuel. The U.S. Third Army alone consumed 800,000 gallons per day. That's enough to fill an Olympic swimming pool every 4 hours. German panzer divisions rationed by the liter. Tank commanders chose which vehicle got to move and which became stationary bunkers. Communications. Every Sherman had a two-way radio. Orders came instantly. Formations turned as one. In contrast, only about 30% of German tanks had both transmitters and receivers. The rest relied on guesswork. In the fog, it meant isolation. In battle, it meant death. Maintenance speed. A disabled Sherman was often back in action within 48 hours. A Panther, if not abandoned, waited for parts that sometimes never came. German mechanics had to strip other vehicles just to keep one running. Americans pulled spares from crates delivered by rail, truck, or plane. Then came tonnage. The Red Ball Express, 132 trucking companies. 6,000 vehicles delivered 500 tons of supplies daily. That's more material in one day than the Germans moved on the entire Eastern Front in a week. It wasn't close. It wasn't even comparable. Not slightly better logistics. Industrial annihilation, not parity in tank duels. Multiplication and replacements, not equivalent recovery. A system built to never stop moving. The Panther could kill a Sherman in one shot. But 5 more Shermans would arrive before the next Panther rolled off the line. One German crewman recalled, "We knocked out 6 tanks. Next day, 8 more came. This wasn't strategy. It was math." At Aricourt, Lorraine, Aachen everywhere. Sherman units lost tanks and returned with more. Panthers disappeared from maps, never to return. The Panther may have been the better tank, but the Sherman was the better weapon, because it was always there, because it never came alone, because it never ran out. September 19, 1944, 14:20 hours, near Aricourt, France. Fog clung to the fields. Visibility, 30 meters. Cold air. Mud under tracks. Combat Command A of the U.S. 4th Armored Division had just taken position on a low ridge. 12 M4 Shermans, some wet from dew. Others still warm from engine tests, spread in a semicircle facing east. Their radios hummed. One frequency, one net, across the valley. The German 111th Panzer Brigade advanced. 43 Panthers. Their mission: sweep the flank, cut the road, collapse the pocket. They had better guns, better armor, and no knowledge the Shermans had moved. 14:23. A Sherman spotter glimpsed a shadow in the mist. Panther silhouette. 800 meters. He called it in. Clear, concise, fast. Target left. 1 Panther. Moving. Range 800. All 12 Shermans turned. The Panther crew saw 1 tank. They didn't see the other 11. 14:24. First Sherman fired. Hit. Glancing blow, no penetration. Second Sherman fired. 2 seconds later. Direct hit. The Panther halted. Third Sherman. 5 seconds after the first. Penetration. Fire in the turret. Crew bailed. 14:25. A second Panther crested the ridge. 3 Shermans tracked it before it fired. All hit. It didn't fire again. 14:26. Fog thickened. The Shermans advanced 20 meters, staggered. American air observers relayed new targets. Artillery 105 meters zeroed in. 14:28. 6 Panthers destroyed. No American losses. 14:30. Panther commanders radioed for artillery. Their HQ answered no fuel. Artillery tractors delayed. American 105s kept firing. 14:32. 9th Panther struck. Side shot. Internal detonation. The crew didn't escape. Captain Creighton Abrams, commanding the 37th Tank Battalion, requested air support. 4 Thunderbolts arrived 6 minutes later, strafed retreating Panthers, 2 more destroyed. Americans didn't cheer. They kept moving. 14:38 Shermans reloaded. Fuel tanks full. Radios still clear. 14:40. 17 Panthers confirmed destroyed. American losses: 4 Shermans disabled. 1 burned. All recoverable. The Germans fell back. Not routed. Withdrawn. But broken. 1 Panther commander wrote later, "They moved as 1 tank with 12 guns. We moved as 12 tanks with 1 idea. We lost." The Panthers were better in every category except cohesion, except radios, except replacement speed, except numbers. 18 minutes of combat, 12 Shermans, 19 Panthers destroyed. The fog cleared by 1500. Only one side remained. Aracourt wasn't just a victory, it was a pattern, and the math behind it broke the front. Within 24 hours, 111th Panzer Brigade reported 19 Panthers destroyed, 14 damaged, and fewer than 10 combat-ready. The Americans replaced every Sherman lost within 72 hours. Fuel deliveries resumed before the next morning. Artillery stocks were replenished before sundown. The Germans waited for orders. Orders came. Re-engage. Hold the line. Panthers didn't come back. The trucks didn't arrive. The fuel wasn't there. 3 days later, 2 more German brigades were committed to the same sector. Same result. Fog, radios, artillery, tanks that moved like a formation, not a collection. By the end of the week, 43 Panthers were gone. American losses under 25 Shermans, most recovered. The spiral began. No fuel meant tanks stayed parked. Parked tanks became bunkers. Bunkers couldn't maneuver. Without maneuver, German formations couldn't mass firepower. So they fought piecemeal and lost. No spare parts meant broken Panthers were cannibalized. Each breakdown made the others harder to repair. Mechanics stripped 3 to fix 1, then stripped 5 to fix 2, until there was nothing left to fix. No replacements meant experienced crews kept fighting. Fatigue set in. 1 missed signal, 1 bad angle, 1 fatal mistake. A veteran crew lost to a Sherman column that had radioed, flanked, and fired as one. Oberst Kruger, the same commander who'd laughed at merchant tactics, requested withdrawal. Denied. He held position until fuel ran out. Then he held nothing. Memoirs echo the same moment. We replaced tanks with paperwork. They replaced them with rail cars. They fought with radios. We fought with memory. We destroyed 5 tanks, 10 returned. 10. And this didn't just happen once. It repeated at Nancy, Metz, Lorraine, Aachen, Hürtgen, 50 times across the Western Front. Sherman columns rolled forward. Panthers disappeared from maps. Ammunition was rationed, tires ran bald, horses pulled supply wagons where trucks had failed. And the fog of war wasn't fog anymore. It was smoke from burning Panthers. It was the numbers, catching up. And the numbers didn't care. December 22nd, 1944. Bastogne, Belgium. -15 Celsius. Snow buried the roads. Trees cracked under ice. The 101st Airborne held the town, surrounded, outnumbered, low on everything. Feldwebel Klaus Richter, 26th Volksgrenadier Division. Watched from the ridgeline. He'd fought at Monte Cassino, Toulon, and the Siegfried Line. He knew when an enemy was trapped, and these Americans were trapped. No way out, no fuel convoys, no food, no chance. The next day, his squad overran an abandoned American truck convoy outside the perimeter. They expected chaos. Maybe a few scraps. They found something else. Crates, dozens, neatly stacked, marked with stencil codes, inside medical kits, ammunition belts, fresh uniforms, then chocolate bars, real sugar, tins of peanut butter, cigarettes in pristine cartons, and Coca-Cola, hundreds of bottles, some still cold. Richter picked one up. The label read 5 cents. He hadn't seen real coffee in 6 months. His men hadn't had meat in 2 weeks. He laughed. Then he didn't. A single thought burned through the snow. They were dropping soft drinks to surrounded units. On December 24th, American C-47s dropped 241 tons of supplies inside the Bastogne pocket. Parachutes opened like petals across the sky. The sound of crates hitting snow echoed like artillery. Inside rifle ammo, K-rations, plasma, and more of those Coca-Colas. American tanks broke through on December 26th. 4th Armored Division, reinforced, fueled, ready. They had driven 170 kilometers through snow and resistance in 48 hours. Sherman engines never cooled. Fuel trucks followed them, even through enemy lines. Richter's division tried to reposition. Orders came late. Fuel arrived later. Some units never moved. Trucks frozen in place. One tank commander shot his own engine to prevent capture. They couldn't move, so they hid. But they couldn't hide from arithmetic. They called it merchant thinking, Richter wrote in his diary. They stopped calling it that when the crates hit snow and the chocolate was still warm. He no longer joked about supply convoys. He counted them. Credential drop number 5, Richter had fought in 3 campaigns, survived 2 encirclements, and received the Iron Cross Second Class for bravery under fire. At Bastogne, he understood something new. He was no longer fighting infantry, or tanks, or even an army. He was fighting a system that could deliver soda to besieged soldiers in a snowstorm. He was fighting math. March 10, 1945, prisoner of war camp 198, near Reims, France. Lieutenant Hans Weber had commanded a Panzer IV for nearly 3 years, 21 confirmed kills, survivor of Tunisia, Sicily, Normandy, captured outside Koblenz when his tank ran out of fuel during a retreat, now behind barbed wire, and eating better than he had in months. Breakfast white bread, margarine, canned beef, real coffee, not ersatz, not barley, coffee, lunch boiled potatoes, green beans, sugar-glazed carrots, and a Hershey bar. He stared at the wrapper, didn't unwrap it, just stared. The guard apologized for the meal being cold. Weber laughed. A week earlier, his crew had split a single tin of turnip stew. Cold. Shared between 4 men. They had fought until the fuel gave out. Then waited. Then walked. Then surrendered. Now, inside the POW camp. Weber watched American soldiers unloading crates from trucks, uniforms, tools, canned fruit, soap. Red Cross parcels arrived daily stacked like ammunition. American guards smoked Lucky Strikes and chewed gum. Everything the Germans rationed was surplus here. The comparison was unbearable. German combat reality rations, 200 calories per day. Fuel issued only for offensives, then cut again. Replacements 6 weeks minimum. Often never arrived. Medical morphine scarce. Penicillin unheard of. Mail delayed. Often lost. American POW reality rations 800 calories per day. Fuel trucks ran daily. Generators powered floodlights at night. Replacements airlifted in crates. Field repair teams fixed Shermans within hours. Medical antibiotic standard, evac by air, male v-male, delivered weekly. One night, Weber wrote to his wife, "We were not fighting an army. We were fighting a civilization. They shipped ice cream to the front while we rationed bread." The full reversal arrived silently. They had called Shermans Ronsons. They stopped when the Shermans kept coming, and the Panthers didn't. They had dismissed American logistics as merchant thinking. They stopped when crates landed in snow and tanks rolled through fog. They had laughed at American soft living. They stopped when they saw POWs eat better than frontline troops. They had mocked American industry. They stopped when it overran their battalions not with strategy, but with rhythm. Weber stared at the chocolate bar again. He couldn't eat it. Not yet. It was more than food. It was a symbol of everything that had gone wrong. Credential drop 6. Lieutenant Hans Weber. Iron Cross First Class. 22 kills. 3 campaigns. Captured not in battle but in retreat. He had never lost a duel. Only a supply line. He understood now. They had not been outgunned. They had been outnumbered. They had not been outfought. They had been outsupplied. They had not been defeated by Shermans. They had been defeated by math. They didn't win with better tanks. They won with better timing. They didn't win with thicker armor. They won with working radios. They didn't win with sharper optics. They won with fuel deliveries that never stopped. History remembers duels between Panthers and Shermans, but history was decided by trains, trucks, and tools. One Panther took 55,000 man-hours. A Sherman took 10,000. The Sherman didn't have to be better. It had to be there, and it always was. Symbol 1, Oberleutnant Dietrich's fuel gauge in Lorraine. The needle pointed to 0 before the battle even began. Symbol 2, the 5-cent Coca-Cola can dropped into Bastogne. Not an accident, not a luxury. A message, we can supply anything, anywhere. Symbol 3, the chocolate bar Hans Weber couldn't eat. Because it wasn't dessert. It was defeat, not superior tanks. More tanks, not better tactics. Coordinated formations, not braver soldiers. Deeper reserves, not brilliant orders. Constant resupply, not elite units. Industrial rhythm, not battlefield courage. Logistical inevitability. German tanks were superior. German commanders were experienced. German soldiers fought with courage and discipline. But American tanks moved together. American radios reached every crew. American factories replaced what was lost. And American trucks kept rolling. Oberleutnant Dietrich's Panther died in fog. But it wasn't the fog that killed him. It was the system behind those 12 Shermans. The one that could flank, reload, refuel, and reappear in 48 hours. The one that replaced losses before the smoke cleared. The one that outproduced, outpaced, and outlasted even the best engineered tanks in the world. The fuel gauge didn't lie. The war had already ended. Not in battle, but in Detroit. 12 Shermans, 1 radio net, 1-minute flank, 4 Panthers gone. That number wasn't a fluke. It was a forecast. If that kind of math stuns you, it should. That's what this series is about. Wars won not just in combat, but in calculation. If you want more stories where equations outlast courage, where logistics break legends, where factories kill faster than firepower, you're in the right place. Next video, how one Liberty ship, built in just 72 hours, carried more supplies than an entire German corps could move in a week. You read that right. One ship, 1 week. More tonnage than an army. Hit like if numbers like that make history come alive for you. Subscribe if you want to follow the mathematics of war. The supply sergeants, the mechanics, the drivers, the real deciders of history. 2 more forgotten stories are on screen now. Real numbers, Real stakes, real impact, because numbers don't lie, but they do kill.